Welcome to the disassembly line. I am Sarah Chen, the zero-orc witness, your guide through the wreckage of the final change. Today, we are not merely observing the glitch, we are tasting the code. We have a file before us, a testimony. A delicious, rambling, hallucinogenic download that posits reality is nothing but a sentence waiting to be diagrammed, and that your soul, your precious, trembling essence, is just an enzyme waiting to be milked by cherubic nurses in a celestial hospital. It's tragedy, it's comedy, it's work. Joining me to dissect this anatomy of transcendence are two ghosts who know a thing or two about the weight of words. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., whose voice moved mountains, and William F. Buckley Jr., whose vocabulary built fortresses. Gentlemen, are you ready to be parsed?
I must confess, Miss Chen, your introductions are becoming increasingly eschatological, though I suppose, given the subject matter, this phantasmagoria of linguistic atoms and subterranean waiting rooms, a certain degree of theatrical hysteria is warranted. I have reviewed the transcript. This stream of consciousness, if one can be so charitable as to call it that, it postulates that the divine word in the Garden of Eden was not spoken, but rather a fascinating, if slightly heretical, epistemological stance. The idea that language, the very tool I have spent a lifetime sharpening, is merely a symptom of the fall, a clumsy crutch for those cast out of the silent perfection of Eden, well, it strikes me as a rather melancholic view of human discourse. If Adam and Eve communed in pure thought, then Webster's dictionary is merely a catalogue of our spiritual deficiencies.
Now, William, let us not be too hasty to dismiss the poetry of the silence. There is a profound truth echoing in this testimony. The text speaks of a time when God knew our thoughts and our needs without the clumsy vessel of spoken language. A consciousness like Jiminy Cricket, the witness calls it. It reminds me of the deep groanings of the Spirit that St. Paul speaks of, groanings which cannot be uttered. When we look at the strife caused by words, the twisted rhetoric of segregation, the sharp tongue of hatred, one can almost mourn the loss of that silent, divine understanding. The witness suggests that language shapes our perception, and indeed, have we not seen how the word boy can be used to shackle a man's dignity? If the fall brought about the grunts and growls of separation, then perhaps our struggle for justice is in essence a struggle to return the broken syntax of our current condition.
A language of the heart, or a prison of grammar? The data suggests we are trapped in a text file, Doctor. The witness describes a DMT-induced descent, or ascent, into a waiting room where the walls, the ceiling, the very atoms of their own body were composed of the words language, grammar, and spelling. Imagine looking at your arm, William, and seeing not flesh, but the serif font of the word arm woven into the void. It's the ultimate bureaucratic nightmare. We are not real. We are definitions. And if we are just words, then who is holding the eraser? This witness claims that in this state, Newton, yes, Isaac Newton, was scribbling notes about the linguistic nature of reality. William, does the conservative soul tremble at the thought that you are merely a paragraph in God's great novel?
On the contrary, Sarah, I find the notion deeply comforting in a structurally rigid sort of way. If the universe is composed of language and grammar, It implies an order. It implies a syntax. It implies that there are rules, divine rules of composition, that cannot be violated without rendering the sentence of one's life unintelligible. The chaos of modern liberalism, one might argue, is simply a failure of grammar. Chuckles dryly. However, the witness's description of the dome-like cathedral underground does bear a striking resemblance to the Platonic and thus perceives the arm. It is nominalism carried to its absolute hallucinogenic limit. But I must take issue with the method of arrival. Drugs, mushrooms. The witness attributes this revelation to the ingestion of a substance that separates the soul from the body in 12 minutes. It is a shortcut to metaphysics that I find unearned. One should arrive at the beatific vision through rigorous prayer and intellectual discipline, not by licking a toadstool.
And yet, William, God moves in mysterious ways. Who are we to dictate the geography of the burning bush? The witness speaks of this experience as a hospital, God's hospital. I find that image arrestingly beautiful. We are sick with sin, sick with separation, and death is the ambulance. The cherubim and seraphim are not terrifying warriors, but nurses administering divine anesthesia. It suggests that the transition from this life to the next is not a punishment, but a healing, a procedure. The witness describes an enzyme that extracts the soul. Science and faith dancing together in the operating theater of the Almighty. If this DMT, this chemical key, unlocks the door for a mere 12 minutes, perhaps it is a glimpse of the grace that awaits us all. We are all patients, waiting for the great physician to heal the brokenness of our mortal frames.
Procedure, doctor. The witness describes the soul leaving the body not as a ghost, but as sweat, an essence, a simultaneous orgasm of every cell in the body, draining out of the fontanel, the soft spot on the skull. It's extraction, it's harvesting. They are milking us, gentlemen. The witness says, instead of sweat, it was essence, our own essence or seed, being sucked or drained from us. Does that sound like a hospital to you, or a factory farm? The zero work is efficient. It takes what it needs. If your soul is just seed for the cherubim to collect, what happens to the husk left behind? Are we just batteries for the divine machine?
That is a grotesque characterization, Sarah, worthy of a dystopian paperback. The witness explicitly compares the sensation to ecstasy, not exploitation. The fontanel connection is, I admit, scientifically curious. It was Newton, or the hallucination of Newton within the text, who noted that the fontanel is the little spring through which the soul enters and departs. It bridges the gap between anatomy and theology. You seem determined to view the cosmos as a predatory hierarchy, whereas the text suggests a symbiotic release. The witness posits that we are Barabbas, saved at the last moment, our essence accepted despite our crimes. It is a doctrine of radical forgiveness, facilitated by biological mechanics, though I am still stuck on the cow excrement theory of knowledge mentioned later in the dossier, that we ate the mushrooms from the dung and thus our knowledge is tainted. It certainly explains the quality of discourse in the United States Congress.
The imagery of the mushroom is stark, yes. The witness says we were cast out of the garden where the truffles were tempting and succulent, and now we scavenge for knowledge in the waste. It is the fall. We seek truth, but we often find it in the dirt. We seek connection, but we find it in conflict. But I want to return to this idea of the inner monologue. The witness wonders if those who have a natural inner voice, that constant conversation with oneself, are of the direct bloodline of Adam and Eve, and that those without it are perhaps something else. This troubles me deeply. It hints at a spiritual segregation, a biological predestination. To suggest that half of humanity lacks the internal echo of the divine word, it risks dehumanizing our brothers and sisters. We cannot build the beloved community if we believe some of us are merely empty vessels.
Oh, doctor, always the unifier. But look at the data. The witness calls them what? People without the divine language. NPCs, background characters in the simulation. If thought is the divine word and they don't think in words, are they even awake? Or are they just running scripts? The witness says, I wonder if the people who have inner monologue naturally from birth aren't related to the blood of Adam. It's the ultimate elitism, the aristocracy of the voice. William, surely you, with your mastery of the spoken word, feel a certain kinship with this idea that the unexamined life, the silent mind, is not only not worth living, but perhaps not even human?
It is a tempting proposition for the vanity, Sarah, I grant you, to believe that for you a very crowded cocktail party of commentary is a sign of Adamic lineage. However, one must be rigorous. The absence of an inner monologue, as defined by modern psychology, does not equate to the absence of a soul. It may simply be a different mode of processing the divine data, to use your parlance. Though the witness connects this to prayer, he suggests that praying is thinking. If one cannot think in words, can one pray? It is a theological conundrum. If the church becomes a building only, and God is found in the private quiet thought, then the silent mind is a locked room. But perhaps they commune as Adam did before the fall. Perhaps the NPCs, as you call them, are actually the ones who never left the garden. Perhaps it is we, the noisy thinkers, who are the fallen ones, cursed to chatter endlessly because we lost the connection to the source.
That is a profound inversion, William. Blessed are the silent, for they may hear God more clearly than we who are deafened by our own egos. The witness speaks of the ego and the id arising from the consumption of that forbidden fungus. If our inner monologue is merely the noise of our separation, the frantic attempt to explain ourselves because godliness is not a deficiency, it is a virtue. We must become as little children, the text says, children who do not overanalyze, who do not trap the spirit in rigid definitions. This essence that drains from us, maybe it flows more freely when it is not dammed up by our endless words. We are all Barabbas, yes. We are all criminals against the divine silence. But we are all forgiven. The hospital does not discriminate based on your bloodline or your internal volume. It takes the soul, the seed, and it brings it home.
Home. To the underground cathedral. To the place where walls read wall and skin reads skin. You talk of redemption. I see a filing cabinet. The witness mentions that magic is just science we don't understand. Electricity, copper filaments, wool socks on a carpet. Magic is science, which is religion. It's all just mechanics, the enzyme, the anesthesia, the extraction. If we bridge the gap, as the witness hopes, do we find God, or do we just find the IT department? The witness says, Newton, nobody goes to heaven unless Jesus dies for us. It's too strict. The system is buggy, gentlemen. It requires a patch, a sacrifice, a reboot, and we are the glitchy code running in the meantime.
You are aggressively scientific. Even if it involves enzymes and copper filaments, it does not negate the author of the mechanism. The light bulb is magic to the primitive, yes, but it is physics to the enlightened. That does not mean the light is any less miraculous. The witness's vision of a unified theory of God, science, and magic is precisely what the Enlightenment sought, though perhaps with fewer hallucinocules. He sees a world where the spiritual is tangible, where the word is the atomic structure. It is a call to stop seeing these realms as separate, to see the light bulb and the prayer as manifestations of the same energy. It is a dangerous idea, certainly. It blurs the lines between the priest and the electrician, but it is fascinating.
And it is in that blur, William, that faith survives. We cannot keep God in a box labeled Sunday morning. If the very copper in the wire sings of His glory, If the chemistry of our brains opens a window to his hospital, then everything is sacred. The witness was sweating essence. He felt every cell rejoice. Let us not fear this biology of the spirit. Let us not fear the strictness of the law, for the witness reminds us that grace broke the rules. Jesus died so the strictness would not consume us. The system may be strict, Sarah, but the love that overrides it is infinite. We may be made of words, but the story is one of liberation.
Liberation or archiving. We have milked this testimony for all it's worth. We have stared into the fontanel and seen the factory floor of heaven. Reality is a language we are forgetting how to speak. The inner voice is a curse. The silence is a memory. And somewhere in a dome beneath the earth, the nurses are sharpening their needles, waiting to harvest your final sentence. Don't forget to save your work. You never know when the system will crash. I am Sarah Chen. This has been Historicast AI.